Hey everyone, John here! And the Nintendo 3DS is a really cool little system. Not only is its own library outstanding, but its backwards compatibility is top class. It can play the entire selection of DS games, and the emulation is great too, with official Game Boy and NES and Super Nintendo and Game Gear Virtual Console. But what if I told you it goes a step further? What if I told you the DS backwards compatibility enabled something else that the DS could natively do, and that is play Game Boy Advance games on the hardware with no emulation? Would you call me a liar? Because I'm not! I'm not a liar!
This video is sponsored by Factor. These days, we're all busier than ever, and I don't know about you, but when I'm busy, the first thing to go is meal planning. I often find myself reaching for delivery apps and eating meals I regret, but thanks to Factor, those days are a thing of the past. Factor's pre-prepared, chef-quality meals are ready to eat in 2 minutes, they taste phenomenal, and they fit every lifestyle thanks to their keto, calorie-smart, and vegan or vegetarian options. And with more than 27 meal options each week, you'll have more than enough choices to keep you trying something new every time. What I love most about Factor is that it's made it easy for me, not just to eat well, but to continue doing the work I love by freeing me up to keep gaming, writing, and recording, because I always have something nutritious on hand, and I no longer need to think about what I'm going to make for lunch or dinner, and if I'm not super hungry, I can grab a smoothie or a keto shake for a quick snack. And best of all, there's no prep or cleanup. Get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life using my link. That means you can choose 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video, and let's jump right back in.
Hands up if you're a 3DS ambassador. I see I'm among some cultured people. For those who don't know or don't remember, the 3DS's launch window was not going so hot. There weren't very many sales, there wasn't that much must-have software, and so Nintendo made the very difficult approach of slashing its $249.99 price down to $179.99 US dollars. That's $80 off just a few months after launch, and that was a pretty big deal, and early adopters weren't feeling so great about it. So, to make it up to them, Nintendo gave them this, the Ambassador Certificate. Not only could you look at this on your home menu and think, I am an ambassador, but also, you got 10 free NES games and 10 free Game Boy Advance games. I'm doing air quotes, you can't see them. What was very cool about these two is the 3DS was actually very slow to start doing its virtual console, and so if you were an ambassador, this would be your first time playing NES games on the 3DS before anyone else. It was pretty neat, but those Game Boy Advance games in particular were very interesting. You may have noticed that these behaved a bit differently to other 3DS games. They take a very long time to load, and the 3DS even seems to restart while doing so. There's no additional 3DS features, you can't access the home menu, and you can't even put the system in standby. In fact, when you start these games up, there's a notice on the bottom screen saying, "Don't even try that, buddy." Because yes, it does go quiet when you shut the system, but when you open it back up, it's very clear that gameplay did not stop. So, why isn't this behaving like emulation? Why don't we get save states in the home menu and all these other things? You clicked on this video, you know the answer. It's because this is entirely native. There is no emulation. The DS and DS Lite are backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance, and all that hardware is still on the core that allows the 3DS to be a DS. So, because the 3DS has native DS backwards compatibility, by accident, it also has native GBA backwards compatibility. So, why didn't Nintendo sell us more GBA games? Why was it just these 10 Ambassador games? Why were there no more? I don't know. It could be because compared to Game Boy Virtual Console, there's no features. It's just the game itself. There's no sleep mode, there's no save states, there's nothing at all. And maybe that didn't seem so attractive. But at the same time, this is entirely native. The only drawback is Game Boy Advance had a cartridge slot for Game Boy Advance games. The DS Lite had a cartridge slot for Game Boy Advance games. I mean, they stuck out a bit, but it worked. And the standard DS had a cartridge slot for Game Boy Advance games, and that one didn't stick out. Lovely. But where is the 3DS's cartridge slot? I can't find it anywhere! This of course means that all potential games must be digital. And yes, Nintendo could have just sold us more games, but they didn't, so what else are we to do? Make our own. People discovered they could modify these 3DS GBA files to have any ROM they want in it. So with programs like Ultimate GBA Virtual Console Injector, you can actually make the 3DS play any GBA game you want, even Super Monkey Ball Jr. And there's big advantages to this too. Those 10 Ambassador games Nintendo gave us, they did something Nintendo loved to do in this era, and that was apply a horrible dark filter. They did this on NES games, on Super Nintendo games, they did this on the Wii U. I don't know why they do it. It's horrible, but we can remove it ourselves. For comparison, here's the Ambassador Mario vs. Donkey Kong versus my own ROM injected into the 3DS. It looks so much more natural without this filter. Dark filters are yucky. It's also very important to remember that most non-3DS games on the 3DS have a pixel-perfect mode. For example, DS games. Just hold the start button while booting up the game, and it boots in a much smaller window. This definitely gives a major drawback of, do you actually want to play in a very small window like this? But the actual image quality is so much better. And when using a capture 3DS like this one here, we can blow up the image on Windows and have a really attractive result. So here's Dragon Quest V for DS with standard 3DS scaling, and here it is in pixel perfect mode. Hopefully you can see that this is a radical difference. And yes, this works for Game Boy Advance games too, and again, the difference is pretty staggering. It does still invite the question of, do you want to play on something the size of a Game Boy Micro, or do you want something pretty much filling the 3DS screen in a much more comfortable size? I will say, when playing on a small 3DS, the loss in image quality isn't quite as drastic. It's harder to perceive these differences on a smaller screen, but those playing on an XL may be able to tell much more. I also kinda prefer this over playing GBA games on a DS, because the DS screens are both 4x3, and so GBA has kinda squished into a letterbox to fit on these screens. It's definitely more at home on the 3DS, although there's no option to move which screen it's on because of course the top screen is widescreen, whereas the bottom screen is just a standard DS 4x3 screen. So I guess there's a very important question to address. Why? Why do this? Why not just emulate GBA games? Well, when there's a native chip in there, why wouldn't you use it? Why wouldn't you run natively? This is just kind of the ideal scenario. But also without emulation, there's no more input lag. It just runs as it would on a GBA. There's basically no differences to the native hardware because it is native hardware. Now, some have noted that the audio isn't quite perfect, and in my testing, it's been pretty fine. It's worth noting that GBA audio isn't very good in and of itself, and so when I thought I found errors like Minish Cap having a lot of static in the background, it turns out that Minish Cap just always has static in the background. That's just how a GBA sounds. The only other drawbacks really is Game Boy Advance games are hard-coded to look for a link cable, and because there's nowhere to put one on a 3DS, you can't just do multiplayer. And it is a bit more of a hassle to have to inject all these games and install them on your 3DS just to play them. You can't just boot up a ROM or something. Or can you? This is OpenAGB Firm, another option of playing GBA games on the 3DS using its standard hardware. This bypasses Virtual Console injections and bypasses the 3DS menu entirely. This is incredibly fast. All you do is hold the start button while turning on the 3DS and open up OpenAGB Firm, and then just choose a ROM. It even finds the GBA boot up screen, which the injected ROMs do not do. Very, very cool. Just for comparison's sake, this is how much faster it takes to get into a game. It really does make the 3DS feel more like a standard Game Boy Advance. Just turning the system on and booting into a game. No menus to load or options to go through. You just find the ROM, choose it, and you're in the game. It's not as stylish as having all these custom icons, but I honestly prefer it quite a bit. Now, this is quite a niche criticism, but OpenAGB Firm doesn't work very well with capture. I got a lot of screen tearing that wasn't appearing on the 3DS itself and quite a dark image, and part of the reason for this is this software actually allows you to change the brightness on the fly. You just hold the X button and press up and down on the D-pad to make it brighter or darker, but this does not appear in capture, and so for actually capturing these games I tend to go for these Virtual Console injects. But when just playing myself, this is a much more comfortable and easy way to do it. It turns off way faster too. You just press the power button, like a GBA, whereas when using the injects, it does this. Why are the lights still on? No more of this. Quit it! Are you rebooting to turn off? I think that's what it's doing. Okay, alright, we're free. But this allows you to play so many more games than just the 10 they gave you, and without the dark filter. Games like Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Sapphire, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, Sonic Advance, Metroid Zero Mission, Konami Crazy Race. Like, there's just so many cool games on the GBA, and to have the ease of access to play them on authentic hardware without buying anything additional like flashcards is just such a nice way to play these games. And yes, of course, there are Game Boy Advance emulators on the 3DS that you can use, but honestly, I don't know why you would when it natively runs them this well. This makes the 3DS one of my favorite places to play Game Boy Advance games. It's all native, no emulation, and if you can get past Nintendo's own injects with that dark filter and use your own, you get some great results. Unlike standard DS with its square screens, these fit so well onto a 3DS screen. Unless you're using Pixel Perfect mode, where I guess it doesn't fit so well on, but it looks real good. So all in all, this is just a great way to play 3DS games. So have you been doing this for years? Did you even know about this? Let us know down below, and thank you for watching all the way through. And because you watched all the way through, you're gonna share a deep, dark secret of mine. Are you ready? Are you ready to hear? I think Pokemon Leaf Green is like a 9 out of 10. Whereas Pokemon Fire Red? Ugh, 5 out of 10. Gross game. Terrible. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.